Go.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Addison Brumfield, and I'm doing my presentation on Huntington's disease, or Huntington's chorea. Just a little fun fact before we start. The protein that affects people in Huntington's disease is called the Huntington protein, named after the man who discovered Huntington's as it is, George Huntington. Now let's begin. What is Huntington's disease? Huntington's disease, or Huntington's chorea, or also known as HD, is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder characterized by motor dysfunction, cognitive decline, and psychiatric symptoms. For the most part, as a beginning symptom for Huntington's, which is terrifying, it's normally just mood swings. And you won't know that you have Huntington's until you reach about the age of 40, unless you have a long line of Huntington's. Now, this is my graphic of the Huntington gene, or HTT. It's right here, and it's also over here. I wish I could have made it huge because it's really hard to see. But these are your glutamine repeats, and normally they only repeat less than 27 times in a normal. This is on gene 4. It normally only repeats about 4 times, but in Huntington's it goes, 27 times, but normally in Huntington's it goes over 35 times. Now, depending on how many people in your family have had Huntington's, it can go further and further. The more repeats on the CAG or polyglutamine that you have, the earlier your symptoms will be visible. Now, the symptoms of Huntington's. The earliest signs of Huntington's, like I said, are depression, irritability, anxiety, obsessive thoughts, and increased impulsivity. This is why a lot of the times you see people who have Huntington's disease kind of go off the rails, as you could say it. You see them start to do more things that they wouldn't normally do. They spend their money on things that they wouldn't normally spend their money on. It essentially looks like a midlife crisis. You would never know that it's something so bad. And then as it progresses, you normally start to lose your intellectual abilities. You start to stutter more, you slur your words, you forget things a lot, you can't plan. That's mostly what occurs in the middle stages. But then once you reach full on, you start to experience what is called chorea. This is mostly characterized by jerky, dance-like movements. They're nonsensical. Normally you lose control of your eyes, like your eyes will, they'll start to dart everywhere. Your hands will dart, you'll get jerky movements in your neck, and these cannot be stopped purposefully. They only stop in your sleep. Now, what causes these? For emotional distresses, that's the way I'm gonna put that, is emotional distresses for all of the different issues. Normally, in the HTT gene, or the Huntington protein, it gradually causes neuron depletion in the areas of your brain that control your moods and your emotions. As for intellectual decay, it's the same. It happens in the lateral ventricles inside your brain. You start to lose neurons, and then eventually you even start to lose brain tissue. That's also one of the ways that they find Huntington's, is by normally a CT scan, and you can see your lateral ventricles have become quite enlarged. You lose brain tissue. And then for loss of motor control, this happens in the basal ganglia, also in the lateral ventricles. It helps you control your motor skills, and as you start to lose brain tissue or neurons, you can't control it as much anymore, and then eventually you won't be able to control it at all. Why is this a cell communication disorder? Huntington's is a cell communication disorder because of the HTT gene that is affected. In this HTT gene, your polyglutamines will repeat more and more and more. And during replication, the DNA polymerase will decide that it's getting confused because of how many CAGs there are, and it will start to bunch up. I wish I had a good graphic, but essentially, you take your line right here, and it's replicating it, and it catches up on so many CAGs that it starts to bunch up like a kink in a hose pipe, and so you get 2 or 3 extra repeats for every one repeat. which causes more and more intellectual and physical and motor skill problems. Your neurons slowly begin to degenerate in almost every single part of the brain. Now, you can't see all of those because not all of them are outward or even intellectual, but you start to lose control of anything in your own body. You essentially become a human living inside of like a rock that you can't control. Also, for your intracellular signaling pathways begin disrupting. The brain-derived neurotrophic factor is essential for your neuron survival, and it begins to break down. You essentially lose any kind of survival skills in your neurons. As for physical changes in the brain, your ventricles are enlarged, like I mentioned before. Your brain tissue begins to break down because of neuron loss, and it spreads quite a bit. You essentially have two holes in your brain. I have them somewhere here. Yes, see, this is what a normal lateral ventricle would look like. This is what it looks like with Huntington's. You begin to lose this part of your brain. It's not just inside the brain. It straight up changes the physical attributes of your brain. Why did I choose Huntington's? I chose Huntington's mostly because of Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie was a famous singer and songwriter, mostly known for his Dust Bowl ballads in the early 1920s and 30s. He died of Huntington's at the age of 50, I believe. I'll come back to him later. I have a little more, but Woody Guthrie, he sang "This Land Is Your Land." That's what he's known for the most part. I mostly have him in here because he was a writer and he wrote about his issues. He wrote about the problems that he had with Huntington's, and I just thought it was a great way to characterize the feelings. See, I'll read this for everybody. Here's my funny feeling over me again. Shaky, bad control, out of control, jumpy, jerky, high tension. No bodily pains, just like my arms and legs and hands and feet and my whole body belongs to someone else and not to me. So ashamed of myself, I want to run, hide away where nobody can find me nor see how bad I feel. Worse than this, I ask myself, what makes me break my head to try to hide my weak jitters? My trouble isn't the dizzy spell, nor the pains, nor in my weakly feeling, but my worst pains come because I spend every drop of my bodily strength trying to hide my trouble away so you can't see it. Trying to keep you from reading it in my face or my eyes or in any words that I'd say or in the stumbly way that I walk around. Now, who does Huntington's affect the most and why? It's quite sad the way that Huntington's affects people. Normally, what happens is if your parent has Huntington's, if only one parent has Huntington's, you have a 50% chance of getting it. If both parents have Huntington's, you have around a 98% chance of getting it. And then if you have it and you pass it on to your kids will have it. Again, inheritance. Huntington's is an autosomal dominant disorder. Like I said, if your parent has it, it's almost a go-to that you will. This was just a short description that George Huntington wrote about it. I just thought it was interesting to see early writing about it because it essentially calls it as it is, but with older terms. Solutions and treatments. You have medications such as antipsychotics, antidepressants, and tetrabenazine that can help your worries, your emotional worries. It can help stabilize you. Physical therapy will help with shaky movements. Supportive care, such as being in a home or such to take care of you, and then experimental treatments such as gene silencing and stem cell therapy are ongoing. Your life expectancy is about 10 to 20 years after you are found with Huntington's. Your quality of life is not very high. Eventually, you will become essentially a shell that you can no longer control. That's the end of my presentation.